with Mercy, of course, it's all over that album. And I wonder, when I listen to that record, it feels like such a complete kind of feeling, complete kind of, I get to the end of the record and I go back, it's such like, it's so profound, and it has a full stop at the end, it feels like to me. And so I wondered, of course, you had the EP between the albums, didn't you? Mm. But I wondered, was there a moment that you had after writing and recording Mercy and putting it out and talking about it? Was there a moment where you thought, okay, what am I going to talk about next? What am I going to write about next?
Absolutely. I think that, that body of work was so specific to an accident, so specific to losing my father. And so all of the songs made sense as a whole. And I think I was so thankful for the sort of feedback, the positive feedback that I got from that album, because when I was writing it, I wasn't really thinking about what people would think. It was an insular kind of introspective time in my life where I was reflecting and praying a lot. And then putting it out, I didn't really know what people would think. And it was a beautiful response. People were so positive. And then, when I started touring that music, I felt, okay, how am I ever going to write a body of work that's as important as this or as meaningful? Because I'm never going to lose that person again. I'm never going to lose the most important person in my life. That doesn't happen twice. And it was hard for me to get going on the writing. Sorry, I've had this lengthy response.
This is the place for it.
It was hard for me to get going because I just thought nothing has as much weight or nothing feels as meaningful. And, I took a little break and I had a child and I spent some time just recalibrating. And then I came back to music and I understood, what? Singing about love is just as important as singing about loss. And it's the same thing, really. This album that I wrote, My Home Is Not in This World, really stemmed from a place of birth and new life. Mm. And that was kind of what prompted me to begin the writing process again. And I think that can be just as important, even if it's not as specific as a concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think about the work of it, because all of this is work. It's brain work, right? It's because playing music is your job, but it's also something spiritual that cannot exist within that kind of job realm of what we know as work, right?
Right.
So is that something you've thought a lot about your relationship to your work, how you do it, where you set your own boundaries?
Yes, I do think about that. I do think about it a lot. It's our job as musicians, I think, is to sort of tell and document the world as it is. Is that your little buddy?
Yeah, it's Mr. Pickles.
Hey, Mr. Pickles.
Oh, every time I pick him up, I don't think he actually minds being picked up, but the last few times he's made a giant hole in whatever shirt I'd been wearing. So I'm tempted not to pick him up, but can we show him? Pickles, you say hi? He's such a sweetie.
He's so beautiful.
He's such a good cat. And I did not, I'd had housemates in, I lived in a punk house where there was 8 people and took in a bunch of feral cats. I never felt connected with those cats. But as soon as we got Pickles, I think the best way I could describe it is that it unlocked something in my heart, which is ridiculous. That it's a domestic pet. But it really did. I physically felt something inside of me and still do.
Well, that's beautiful. I mean, that's your friend.
Yeah.
How is he named Pickles? Do you like pickles?
Do you know what? I think it's just Eva and I are quite into our condiments. We're quite serious about it.
I mean, I am a huge pickle fan. Just
really?
For the mustard. I
Yeah.
love pickles, and I've been known to eat a pickle when I'm in a bad mood because something about pickles just changes my whole attitude, my whole energy. I rely on pickles actually.
Well, the pickle juice is supposed to be really good for you. Football players have it, drink it when they have cramp.
Oh, really?
I read that
didn't know
yesterday.
that. So with the sort of vinegar or something with the brine or
Something like that. Yeah, I mean, it's almost like an activator, isn't it? You do that shot, and you're like, whoa, you know. That's good. It's good that you know what helps you out of a funk.
I mean, it's just such a funny thing, though. I've relied on pickles many times in my life. I've also made lots of pickles.
Okay.
We'll grow pickles. We have a garden in the summertime, and pickles always take off. And so there's so many cucumbers, not pickles.
Mm-hmm.
Plant the cucumbers, and then there's just hundreds by the end of the summer. And so we end up pickling, we make, I don't know, 30 jars and then give those to our neighbors. And
Wow.
fun.
Yeah.
We'll put mustard seed, dill, jalapenos. I kind of like a little kick with the pickles.
You're a good neighbor.
That's our job. We have to be good neighbors,
100%. And actually, we've lived here for 8 years, and like nowhere else that I've lived, apart from like the village that I grew up in, every kind of city that I've lived in, I've never known my neighbors. And now we know all of our neighbors. And when we go away, we have like 3 people immediately within like 30 meters that can look after the cat while we're away. It's so beautiful.
That's amazing. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about neighbors lately because we live in Glendale in California.
Okay.
And we're on top of a hill, and there's lots of wildlife. There's this beautiful eucalyptus tree here, and it's just teeming with bird life every morning. Yeah. All sorts of gorgeous sort of tropical birds, North American birds. It's amazing. And the birds are our neighbors, but we also have some beautiful families that live next to us. I'm so thankful for that. And I just think about how fortunate we are to be here. And I think about the neighbors of Palestine and Israel. They're neighbors, and they're doing horrible things to each other. And Ukraine and Russia, it's like, you guys are neighbors, and we're supposed to love our neighbors. And it's just, it's a sad time in the world. And I think it's more important than ever that we are examples, and we set a good example of loving our neighbor,
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. And it's not a reason to do it. But the thing about being great to your neighbor is that it comes back around.
Exactly. It's the easiest thing in the world. If you're kind to your neighbor, they will hook you up.
They will give you the pickle jar at Christmas.
He will give you the pickle jar every single summer.
Have you got birdsong out there? How many years have you been there? Have you been there long enough to recognize the same birdsong come back?
I know bird songs very well. So I've been in California for 11 years. And so there's a spotted towhee who's here a lot. We've got orioles. We have a cool bird that we don't have in Chicago where I grew up, called the red-whiskered bulbul.
Okay, I'm going to have to Google this
cool.
guy.
He has a crown, B-U-L.
Yeah, cool.
And that's kind of like a mohawk. He's also sort of a tropical sounding songbird.
Looks like a rebellious bird.
Totally. He's a punk.
He is. He's a punk rocker.
Total punk rocker. And now I can identify them by their calls, which is super fun. And, I like to know bird song. I think it's just a fun thing to have in vocabulary.
I'll occasionally do that thing where I catch myself looking at my phone and I'm like, oh, I haven't even recognized, I haven't smelt the air. You know, I haven't smelt the different smells today to yesterday, and the seasons changing, and like it's a pretty nasty feeling. You know, like, oh fuck, you know, I'm screwing it right here. I suppose it's good to call yourself out on it than not recognize it at all, but you know, it's a good reminder, and I'm sure everyone has that to some extent.
I hope so. I mean, I think we're so involved in our phone life. We really have these lives on our phones. And it's like our life is now revolved around our cell phone. And I mean, I don't know. Like, we have to just set reminders for ourselves to get off, literally smell the roses, look outside, walk, take the phone off of the body.
Yeah.
And remember that we're humans, and you know, there are trees out there, and we can go touch them.
Do you wake up early? When do you start writing? And speaking of phones, do you try and not look at your phone for a little bit?
I think that's really important because it is such a distraction. But right now, I'm just starting to work on a new music. I was kind of putting together visuals for this body of work. My home is not in this world. Now I'm going back to the studio. So, I mean, a typical day is kind of, you know, I wake up early with my son. His name is Arthur. He wakes up around 6, and then there's breakfast and play, and he'll go down for his first nap a little after 9, and then I can go, you know, if we have my husband here or if we have somebody to help take care of him, which we have a wonderful woman who works with us, Vanessa, then I can go to the studio from basically 9 to 5. I'm doing 9 to 5 these days.
Yeah.
And that's I like working early. I think that's when sort of the creative juices start to get going. I used to be a night owl, but I don't really, that's not my position in life these days.
Where did you learn working from? Because, you know, like with the skate shop thing and skateboarding, it's like no one tells you to do it. And also no one, well, I suppose maybe some people do teach you. So did you have a teacher when it comes to writing music? Or it could be any kind of art, but did someone teach you how to almost like set up your day?
I mean, you just have to get into the practice. I mean, you have a good practice. You communicate with people, you research, you have wonderful questions, and you do that over and over again. And you're a great interviewer and journalist, really. I mean, would you call yourself a journalist?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And that takes such practice. And same with being a songwriter. You know, I don't go 365 days a year. I have to take some breaks, but when I'm in the studio, it's, you know, sort of months of daily work. And I guess I've learned that from some of my teachers. I've had some piano teachers that I was studying jazz piano when I was younger, and you know, they taught me the importance of discipline. And my parents were both very disciplined, and discipline is around me. But I also can get tremendously distracted and just want to go out and wander around in the woods all day.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's part of the creative process.
Yeah, because that's where, not always, right? But if you feel in that moment with nature, or you have this great conversation with someone working at the shop or whoever, I can see how that can be a click, and then you start writing about that, which makes me wonder where's the kind of line between, you know, going out there and like living and coming back and writing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think nature has been one of my greatest influences my whole life. And so thankfully we have access to nature here in California. And sometimes I'll travel back to the woods where I grew up outside of Chicago. And of course, socializing is not something where I pull energy from. I pull energy from trees, from birds, from the earth, and from art. So if I do socialize, I like to see a show,
Yeah.
of one of my contemporary friends, an artist, or, somebody who's no longer living. But I pull a lot of inspiration from going out and taking in some other form of art,
Yeah. Yeah.
as we all do.
I feel for people on tour, and especially people who are maybe like that kind of college age, where the socializing is such a big part of it's as big as playing music, it seems. So then to get distracted by the socializing, I can empathize, right?
I always feel a little bit like jealous of people who are going out and partying and socializing every night, because I think the time I socialize the most with people is when I'm on stage, and that's when I'm actually interacting with people. And of course I love my friends. I love to see my friends, but I don't know, it's a weird thing. I always feel a bit drained after going to a party.
Yeah, 100%.
I need to hibernate for a month before I go out.
I've still got that thing. I feel like it's a teenager's trait. I still have that thing where sometimes even seeing like my closest friends, I come back and I'm like, oh, do they hate me? You're like, oh, I'm just tired. I'm tired. Am I too much? I'm a 34-year-old man. I shouldn't be doing that anymore. And also I know I'm not the only one. But it's draining. All of that is exhausting.
Mm-hmm. But we also have to, it's kind of our duty also to make an appearance in the world and try to give back to the community through conversation, or by offering hopefully something to your friends and listening, really.
Yeah.
It's our duty to go out there and listen to people, because people are hurting. Every single person is hurting, and I find that when I do end up making an effort to see somebody, you just learn that they are suffering differently than everybody suffers differently. But I guess that's the reward of going out and socializing, as we're calling it. The reward is that you can offer something, you can offer your ears to someone, and I think that's an important thing in the world that not a lot of people do. Lots of people don't listen. I mean, you're a great listener.
But I can still be that person that talks over someone. You can be both. You can be both.
Of course, me too. I'm a horrible listener a lot of the time. But then when you learn that people are fucked up and hurting, you're like, okay, now is my time to actually listen.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe they'll tell a really good joke afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
When you were in your band with your brother, and when you were active and when you were touring, and you put out 3 albums, didn't you? So that's like a pretty long period of time and playing shows. How are you doing it? How are you getting by?
We were having a fun time. We were touring so often, so regularly. We were touring in Europe, US. I mean, I felt like we played every rock club in North America like 15 times.
Yeah.
So we were working a lot.
But that still excited you. You. That didn't get you down.
I mean, tour is kind of a grueling work form, but I think it's also kind of in your blood as a musician. It's like the act of moving from city to city and doing these shows and getting into this sort of routine of, even though there's lots of sitting and waiting around to give this 1 hour of performance, it's the act of doing something over and over again, which kind of is ingrained in us. And, speaking of discipline, that's kind of it gives you purpose in a way. And I think that's why I keep going back to the road, because I feel like, okay, I'm actually doing the thing I was born to do. I do enjoy performing, but I think that when I was younger, because I started touring when I was 16, and I was playing with my brother's instrumental band, and it was. I think I probably had more energy naturally. I'm
Yeah.
35, and I still love going on the road, but I think I'm trying to look at things a little differently now rather than doing, every city across North America. I can do a more selective group of shows.
Yeah.
This record, I think I'll do New York and Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco, and play at some special venues. There's a
Yeah.
really special venue here called the Masonic Lodge. It's actually it's an old Masonic temple, but it's a beautiful theater, and it's in a cemetery, and it's
Yeah.
just a groovy venue. And
Yeah.
I like to focus on kind of playing special venues, and rather than just going out and screaming my face off every night.
Yeah, and you can do that. You can make these shows special. Not that any other show isn't special if you're playing down the Sticky Floor pub, but if you can really think about, okay, what makes sense for your music. If you're someone going to the show, how do you want to be surrounded by? What does the surroundings look like? How do you feel when you go into that venue? Yeah, that's cool.
I've got a great booking agent out of the UK. Paul, he works with Pitch and Smith, and he's so thoughtful. We're gonna do. He's just the most thoughtful guy in general. But then, paired with putting me in special venues in Europe, he's always found very cool, very intimate venues, and I think it's important, to feel like you're in a unique place. Yes, the Sticky Floor pubs, I love that. Those are some of the most fun, sweaty shows I've played. But
Yeah.
I also think that, especially with Mercy, it was very important for me to be playing in, whether it was a church or a garden. It just sort of made sense with that album. And I think that also makes sense with this body of work too.
Yeah. Is that something, obviously that is something that you've learned because, you play all these different types of venues and you think about, okay, what's the ideal situation? How do I want this to feel? But going back to like you're sort of being a 16-year-old going on tour and into your mid-20s, were you working side hustles at the start, like between, or were you going to college? Where was your brain at with that stuff?
Yes, I was. I've had my fair share of odd jobs and, waiting tables, bartending a little bit. I went to school. I went to school for a year. I studied jazz piano in college. And then I moved to New York for a little while. And you're kind of going back and forth between touring, writing, picking up some shifts as a waitress to make things work. But it was fun, those early years with Wild Bell, because we did have some small success, and we had the opportunity to put out a few records with Columbia Records, and I loved working with them. They're just legendary. Their roster of musicians. We have Miles Davis and Coltrane and Johnny Cash, and
It's wild.
everybody I love. So that was a real pleasure to work with them.
Did you see the music industry change in that time? Because I'm guessing bands still get big advances now, but just everyone knows that, even just 10 years ago.
It's crazy. It's completely different. The industry is completely different. And it was a very romantic time, 15 years ago for me, because there was a bidding war between Atlantic Records and Columbia Records, and they were flying from London. It was like, of course, it's like the old school thing where they take you to dinner. They're buying me clothes, like taking me shopping so I can look like a fucking goddess on stage. And
Yeah.
I was like, this is the time of my life. We were staying at the fanciest hotels in London, putting an 8-piece band up there. I mean, it was so fun. And it's different now. And I think in some ways it's gotten sort of darker for musicians because it's even harder to make a living. With the Spotify's of the world, it's like whatever they're up to these days, you don't even start to get paid until you have like 100,000 streams or whatever it is. There's that going on, and that's very frustrating. But even touring, you aren't making as much money as you used to make. So there is a dark side, but there's also a hopeful side and a beautiful side where I think musicians are able to do things by themselves a lot more than like the record labels make you think. Like record labels used to make it be all about like what we're going to do for you, and you can't do this without us.
Yeah.
But I think every musician is kind of like, I don't need that. I make my art, I make my music, I can record it in my room if I want. I can go on a 4-track tape machine and just put it out, and I think that's a really cool thing. There's a lot more independence in the music world, which is seeing, and I really appreciate that.
And you must have learned a lot about that with Third Man and Jack White, with what he and what they've done, make their own record pressing plant, make this kind of like, it's like a club, isn't it? You go into this place and it's like a club of independence. And I love the way that they reissue stuff that came out that can't, I've never seen on record before. It's like, oh great, that exists now. And
Totally.
And the feel of it is I like the logo always feels like something from like Dr. Evil's lair, I think. It's quite but it feels, you go into the, you read into it and it feels like they're embracing exactly what you just said and kind of making sense of this world of how it operates now.
They're the best, and I felt like I found my home with them when they heard Mercy, and when the way they talked about it and the way they understood the music, and wanted to understand where I was coming from and what I had gone through. They were just so lovely and kind and good. They were just good people, and they're also like punk rockers, and they love analog, and they are just like, they're so cool. And I love Jack White, love his music, and I'm a big fan of his and what he's doing. And the pressing plant, I mean, even before I was working with them as one of their artists, I was always pressing my records at Third Man, and they just have the coolest plant. Have you been able to
just seen photos and videos? Yeah,
super cool.
Yeah,
I feel lucky. Like you said, it's like a club. I feel like I'm part of the club, and I've never felt like I belonged to any sort of group or clique, or I was never really a part of any sort of family like that. So that feels really nice.
And making the record with your brother, and there's some amazing moments that you can really hear the analog, and it's very satisfying to listen to. I imagine it's really satisfying that you've made it with your brother that you're in Wild Bell with, and you'll literally see, you can go to the pressing plant where it's pressed up. You'll probably, you could, I'm sure if you wanted, go to see where the sleeves are printed, where they get the stick and where it gets the shrink wrap on. It's there. It's like, I feel like so much of music's in this kind of opaque box, and but you can see it.
Right. And I want it to be a physical feeling. I want these songs to have a physicality, that sort of a tactile component to them, even though it's just music. I love that you can just hold the vinyl and not even just the physical stuff, but like, I am hoping that my music can touch people physically, because the greatest music that I've grown up listening to and been inspired by has always moved me physically. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
What's something that's moved you in like a strange place? I mean, talking about work and jobs, I often think about the people that I've met at work. I think about this guy that I worked with who's, just kind of a character, and it'd probably take me a long time to try and explain it. But, I feel like we've all had those kind of interactions where we feel, you talk about physicality, it's like when you learn about someone who has just a very different life to you, and it's fascinating and you just want to know more. What's one example of that's happened to you? I guess it could be recent, or it could be when you were like a teenager.
Well, I feel like I'm physically moved every day of my life. I feel everything.
Yeah.
I feel way too much. And sometimes it's painful, but the image that just popped into my head is there's a school around here, and it's adults who are living with mental illness or
learning differences.
Yes, learning differences. And there's a young man who's probably 20 years old, and he lives with his mother. And when I go to the grocery, I somehow go to the grocery when this bus is dropping him off once a week.
Yeah.
And I see him, and he gets out, and his mother is waiting for him at the door. And it's just so sweet. She just hugs him, and he is so excited to see her every single day, and she's waiting there, and he hugs her, and she hugs him back, and they have a different life than I do, and it's a lot to take care of an adult child who might not be able to take care of themselves, and it's just so beautiful. And I mean, that's one experience that I have kind of regularly. I get a glimpse into their life, and I don't feel bad for them. I'm not crying because I pity them. It takes a lot of patience to be a mother that can offer love and kindness to her son, who probably can be frustrating sometimes. And every time I see her, she's there loving him more than anything in the world and delighted to see him. And it's just beautiful.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's great. There's a place called the Albany down the road here, and they have loads of different programs for people with learning differences. And it's just the visibility of it, the visibility of people in chairs or with people who have people with them. It's like, and I have, when you say that, wrap around the big hug, I can see that, and I can see the big smile. And yeah, it is, my aunt, before she passed way too young, was disabled, and I guess my grandparents were the kind of people that never took her to hospital to find out what was wrong, because that's just not what they did. What you did, whatever happened, happened at birth, and Auntie Anne was like that. And I wonder if it's because of knowing Anne that I feel like a big connection, and it's like that it's joy. It's like what I used to talk with Anne a lot about. She used to fucking love Mr. Bean. And it's just like, oh my God. And I'm like, I've got so much stuff that worries me, and so much stuff that I'm like, get distracted by, and I'm worried and whatever this. I'm like, oh, actually, not that doesn't completely not matter, but it's like, oh, actually, but there are more important things in this life. Mm-hmm. I feel I have a lot of love. That brings me a lot of joy. Yeah.
I think it's important to remind yourself of your aunt or your friends who are making the most out of life when they were dealt with something that is not easy, and if you can just remember that some people are happy when you're feeling like shit.
Yeah.
It's totally. Like, well, about them. Think about what's going on with their life. They can't walk.
Yeah.
I can run down the street whenever I want.
Yeah.
What's my problem?
Hey, it's lovely to chat, Natalie. Great
Thank
to
you
meet.
so much for taking the time, and thank you for listening to the music. And you're so lovely, and you've got a really kind heart. Thank you.
Thank no. That when we went to go see you in that venue in King's Cross, I forget the name, but it's a beautiful place. And I think you'd just given birth to Arthur. Is that right?
I think I might have been pregnant.
Okay, Lafayette. Does that ring a bell?
Yep, because I was there. I was there almost 2 years ago. I think he was not born. Oh gosh, he's not even 2. I was there. He's a year and a half. Sorry, time is strange.
Yeah. I remember it felt so one. Like I feel like we were there like with your kid, and physically we were. Yeah, that's funny.
I made the announcement. I think I was like, and by the way, I'm pregnant tonight.
I think that was it.
Which was kind of fun because it was early enough where it's like a little scary to say that to your audience, but I just trusted that he was going to be healthy. Thank God he is.
Was that the first time you told a group of people?
Yeah. That was fun. It was so fun, and what a loving response. I mean, that was a good night. I loved that show. Our publicist, Jamie Woolgard. You know Jamie, of course.
Yeah, Jamie's brilliant. Yeah,
Jamie's the best. He was freaking out after the show. He was like, "That was insane."
Just to end with, going off, working is such a big part of our lives, and I especially think about now and people in our generation and younger. We just live such completely different work lives to the generation above us. Where that leaves us, I suppose, it leaves lots of us in a position where you work a lot of side jobs and do a little bits and bobs and basically put yourself in vulnerable positions in the work, and you make mistakes and you fuck up, and you're embarrassed and you have those kinds of days. Do you have any work gaffes or any kind of memories of these kind of moments where, maybe you felt a little bit lost, or, you got yourself into a situation where you're like, this is quite funny and I don't know how I'm going to get out of this?
Like, I do feel very privileged to say that, like, I've been able to just keep writing, my whole career. And I've been blessed with inspiration and work ethic. But there was this time when I did have a lull in my writing. And, it's not that I'm putting albums out every year, but I am regularly writing. And it wasn't until kind of a few years ago after I put Mercy out that I was like, I don't think I can ever write music again. And that was a weird position because I thought, okay, I guess this is it. I guess my writing career is over. And that felt horrible because I didn't know when it was going to come back to me. I was always able to sort of tap into that very naturally. And so that lull in my writing, that lasted for probably 2 years. And that was an insane, some people call it writer's block, but I had never experienced that. So it wasn't until I had Arthur that I got out of it. He really sort of helped me through that, and he gave me a reason to start writing again, and kind of fulfilled a new purpose in me. But I do think that thankfully I have visual art that is sort of a constant in my life also, and so it has been very helpful to have the sort of the ability to oscillate between music and then drawings or collage or make flags, being able to go into the physical creative realm versus the musical realm. I think that's been
make flags.
I've been
awesome.
I want to do a show for this album. I think I could do a cool show of flags, but I do sort of large abstract flags, and I'll show you sometime.
Yeah, please do. Cheers for watching. This is 101 Part-Time Jobs. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, and all podcast apps. We've done interviews with Aurora, Kneecap, Idols, Lauren Maybury of Churches, and loads more. So tap into 101 Part-Time Jobs on Spotify, Apple, and all podcast apps.